The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. Book 3. The Castle of Llyr. Chapter 5. The Oath. "Where is Eilonwe?" Taran cried as King Rudlam and Queen Teleria stared at him in astonishment. "Where is Mag? He's made off with her! Sire, I beg you, turn out your guard! Help me find them! Eilonwe is in danger of her life!" What? Queen Teleria clucked. "Mag, the princess? You're overwrought, young man. Perhaps the sea air, don't shake so and wave your arms about, has gone to your head. Because someone isn't here for breakfast, it doesn't mean they're in danger. Does it, my dear?" she asked, turning to the king.
"I should hardly think so, my dear," answered Rudlam. "That is a very heavy charge to bring against a loyal retainer," he added, looking gravely at Taran. "Why do you accuse him?"
For a moment, Taran stood perplexed and torn. Gwydion had bound him to secrecy, but now that Mag had struck, must the secret still be kept? Taking his decision, he let the words tumble from his lips, hurriedly and often confusedly telling all that had happened since the companions had reached Dinas Rednet. Queen Teleria shook her head.
"The shoemaker disguised as Prince Gwydion. The door wasn't the other way around. Then ships and torch signals to enchantresses makes the wildest tale I've heard, young man."
"Wild indeed," said King Rudlam, "but we shall learn the truth easily enough. Fetch the shoemaker, and we shall soon see if he is the Prince of Dawn."
"Prince Gwydion seeks Arkan," Taran cried. "I have given you the truth. If it is not so, you shall take my life for it. Will you prove my words? Fetch your chief steward." King Rudlam frowned.
"It is odd that Mag should not be here," he admitted. "Very well, Taran of Caerdalban. He shall be found, and you shall repeat your tale in his presence."
He clapped his hands and ordered a servitor to summon the chief steward. Frantic with anxiety, knowing the time was fleeting and delay could cost Eilonwe's life, Taran was nearly beside himself when the servitor at last returned with tidings that Mag appeared to be nowhere in the castle, nor could Eilonwe be found. As King Rudlam hesitated, still puzzled by Taran's words, Gurgi, Ka, and Fluider entered the great hall. Taran raced to them.
"Mag! That villainous spider!" the
bard exclaimed as soon as Taran told him what had happened.
"Great villain! She's ridden off with him. I saw them galloping through the gate. I called to her, but she didn't hear me. She seemed cheerful enough. I'd no idea anything was amiss. But they're gone, long gone by now."
Queen Teleria turned deathly pale. The ladies of the court gasped fearfully. King Rudlam sprang to his feet.
"You have spoken the truth, Taran of Caerdalban."
Shouting for the guard, the king strode from the great hall. The companions hastened after him. At King Rudlam's hurried orders, the stables were flung open. Within moments, the courtyard filled with warriors and neighing horses. Prince Roon, meantime, had strolled into the courtyard where he peered at the gathering host.
Hello, he called to Taran. "Is this a hunting party? Splendid thought. They should enjoy a brisk morning ride."
"A hunt for your traitor steward," Taran retorted, thrusting Roon aside and making his way to King Rudlam. "Sire, where is your war leader? Give us leave to put ourselves in his service."
"Well, my war leader, sorry to say, is none other than Mag himself," the king answered. "As we've never had a war on Mona, we've never needed a war leader, and it seemed quite in order to give Mag the honorary title. I shall form up the search party myself. As for you, yes, by all means, help with any task that needs doing."
While King Rudlam saw to the ordering of the warriors, Taran and the companions labored with all speed, tightening saddle girths and handing out weapons from the armory. Prince Roon, Taran saw, had clambered aside a sway-backed, piebald mare that persisted in turning in circles, despite the efforts of the prince to control her. Fluider and Gurgi had led out 3 horses. A glance at the animals filled Taran with despair, for they seemed unspirited, of no great mettle, and he wished for the swift-footed Melendless now grazing peacefully at Caerdalban. King Rudlam, taking Taran by the arm, drew him hurriedly into an empty stable.
You and I must speak together, the king said quickly. The warriors are ready and divided into 2 search parties. One I shall lead over the land south of the river Allah. You and your companions are to ride with my son, who shall command the search in the hills of Paris, north of the Allah. It is of him I would speak.
Prince Roon in command? Taran burst out.
What then, Taran of Caer Dallben?
King Rudlam asked sharply.
Do you question Prince Roon's skill?
Skill? Taran cried. He has none. Eilonwy's life hangs in the balance. Our task must be done without delay. Give command to a feckless fool? He can barely knot a sandal lace, let alone ride a horse or wield a sword. The voyage to Mona showed me more than enough. Choose one of your liegemen, a warrior, a forester, anyone save Roon. He stopped short. Dallben has my oath to protect Eilonwy, and I say what is in my heart. Were I to say less, I would fail in my duty. If I am to suffer for my words, then so be it.
Once again, you speak the truth, the King Rudlam answered. It is not you who suffers for it, but I.
He put a hand on Taran's shoulder.
Think you I do not know my own son? You are right in your judgment. But I know, too, that Roon must grow to be both a man and a king. You carry the burden of an oath to Dallben. I pray you to take the burden of another one. Word of your deeds has reached Mona, King Rudlam went on, and I have seen for myself that you are a brave lad and honorable. I confide this knowledge to you. My master of horse is a skillful tracker. He rides with your party and in truth shall direct the search. Prince Roon commands in name only, for the warriors expect leadership from the royal house. I would entrust my son to you and beg you to let no harm befall him. Nor, added the king, smiling sadly, to let him make too great a fool of himself. Much he has to learn, and much perhaps he may learn from you. One day he must be king of Mona, and it is my hope that he will rule honorably and wisely with Eilonwy, his queen.
Eilonwy? Taran cried. With Roon, her husband?
Why, yes, answered King Rudlam. When the princess comes of age, it is our desire that they shall wed.
Princess Eilonwy? Taran murmured, confused. Does she know of this?
Not yet, nor does my son, said King Rudlam. Eilonwy must have time to grow used to Mona and our ways here, but I am sure it will be happily arranged. After all, she is a princess and Roon is of royal blood.
Taran bowed his head. The grief in his heart kept him from speaking.
What say you, Taran of Caer Dallben? King Rudlam asked. Will you give me your word?
From the courtyard, Taran could hear the clamor of warriors and the voice of Fluider calling his name. Yet these sounds reached his ears as though from a great distance. He remained silent, his eyes downcast.
In this, I do not speak as a liege lord to a liege man, King Rudlam added. I speak as a father who loves his son.
He paused, watching Taran closely. At last, Taran met the king's eyes. I will swear this oath, he said slowly. Your son will come to no harm if it lies in my power to keep him from it. Taran put a hand to his sword. I pledge my life to do so.
Go with my thanks, Taran of Caer Dallben, King Rudlam said. Then help us bring the Princess Eilonwy safely home.
The bard and Gurgi were already mounted when Taran hurried from the stable. Heavy-hearted, he swung into the saddle. Ka flew to join him. Prince Roon, who had finally managed to keep his steed from turning in circles, was shouting commands, unheeded as usual. As the searching parties galloped out the gates, Taran lifted Ka from his shoulder. Can you find her? Seek her carefully, my friend, he murmured, while the crow cocked his head and looked at Taran with shrewd eyes. Taran flung his arm upward. Ka launched himself into the air and sped aloft. Wings beating, the crow circled overhead, drove higher against the sky, then disappeared from sight.
Yes, yes,
shouted Gurgi, waving his arm.
go with flames and spyings. Lead us to evil, wicked steward!
The sooner the better, cried Fluter. I can't wait to get my hands on that sneering spider. He shall know the fury of a flam.
Glancing behind him, Taran saw King Rudlim's band stream from the castle and turned southward. Ahead, the master of horse led his party of warriors toward the higher ground above Dinas Rednip and signaled for the outriders to search for tracks. Taran's face was set and grim as he rode silently next to Fluider.
Have no fear, the bard assured him. We shall bring Eilonwy back with us safe and sound before nightfall, and all of us shall make merry over this adventure. I promise you a new song in celebration.
You would do well to make it a chant of betrothal, Taran said bitterly, and sing of the wedding of the Prince of Mona.
Roon,
cried the startled Fluider.
To be wed? I had no idea. That's one disadvantage of being lodged in the stables instead of the castle. You missed the news and gossip. Prince Roon indeed. Who is to be his bride?
Painfully, Taran told the bard of King Rudlim's plans and of his own oath to keep Roon from harm.
Oh ho,
said Fluider when Taran had finished.
So that's the way the wind blows? Strange,
he added with a quick glance at Taran.
I had always hoped that if Eilonwy were betrothed to anyone it would be. Yes, well, what I meant to say is that despite all the squabbling and bickering between the two of you, I had rather expected.
Do not mock me, Taran burst out, reddening. Eilonwy's a princess of the house of Llyr. You know my station as well as I. Such a hope has never been in my mind. It is only fitting for Eilonwy to be betrothed to one of her own rank. Angrily, he drew away from the bard and galloped ahead.
So you say,
murmured Fluider, hurrying after him.
Look closer into your heart. You may find your opinion to be somewhat different.
Taran, unhearing, pressed his steed to join the line of warriors. Turning northward along the lower slopes of the hills of Prydain, the searching party broke into smaller bands, each quartering its own ground. The warriors, widely separated, moved in long, wavering lines, often out of each other's sight, painstakingly scouting every possible hiding place. Yet, as the morning wore away and the noontide passed, they found no trace of the chief steward or Eilonwy. Among the green and gentle slopes ran broken, pebbly trails where the fleeing mag might have passed and where clues would be invisible to the eyes of even the most able tracker. Taran's heart sank, and his mind chafed the fear that he was following a false hope and that Eilonwy had been taken in an altogether different direction. From time to time, he anxiously scanned the sky for a glimpse of Ka returning with news of the princess. Gwydion, Taran knew, was the only one who might discover Arkin's plan. Mag was the key, but the chief steward had acted so swiftly that perhaps even now he was beyond the reach of the searching party. Taran redoubled his efforts to find a broken twig, a loose stone, anything that might bring them closer to Eilonwy before nightfall put an end to the day's searching. Gurgi, riding close at hand, called out to him.
Look, look! Noble prince goes far alone, too far into the woods. He will lose himself. Then cheerful halloos will turn to sad moanings and groanings.
Taran, who had dismounted to study what seemed a possible trail, raised his eyes in time to see Prince Roon galloping over the shoulder of a hill. He shouted at him, but Roon was too distant to hear, or, more likely, Taran thought, was simply paying no heed. He leaped astride his horse and sought to overtake the prince. Until now, he had managed to keep Prince Roon always in view, but by the time Taran reached the hill, Roon had vanished into the shadows of an alder grove. Below, on the rapidly darkening meadow, Fluider had cantered into sight and was calling him. Taran shouted Roon's name once again, then beckoned for the bard and Gurgi to join him.
That sickening spider has escaped us today,
Fluider cried angrily, while his nag labored to the crest.
But we shall fetch him out tomorrow, and Eilonwy will be safe and sound. If I know the princess, Mag has already begun to regret stealing her away. She's worth a dozen warriors, even if she's tied hand and foot.
Despite the bard's brave words, his face looked deeply worried.
Come, said Fluider. The master of horse is calling in the warriors. Well, we're to make camp with them for the night.
Even as the bard spoke, Taran heard the faint notes of a signal horn. He frowned. I dare not leave Prince Roon to wander alone in the forest.
In that case,
replied Fluider, glancing toward the setting sun.
We had best get hold of him without delay. A flam is keen-eyed, but I'd rather not go stumbling about the countryside after dark, if it can possibly be avoided.
Hasten, yes, yes, with hurryings and scurryings, cried Gurgi. Fearsome shadows fall, and bold but cautious Gurgi does not know what hurtful things hide in them. Oh.
The companions rode quickly into the grove, where Taran felt certain they would find the prince. However, once beyond the ring of alders, and seeing nothing of him, Taran's alarm grew. Vainly he called the prince's name. Only the echo returned. He cannot have ridden far, he told the bard. Even Roon would have enough wits to halt at nightfall. Darkness covered the grove. The horses, more used to their quiet stalls and Dinas Rednith than to the forests of Mona, trod fearfully, rearing and shying at every wind-stirred bush. The companions were obliged to dismount and make their way on foot, leading the reluctant steeds. By this time, Taran was deeply troubled. What had begun as a simple matter had turned grave. He might have fallen from his horse, Taran said. Even now he might be lying hurt or unconscious.
Then I suggest we find our way back to the rest of the band, said Fluider, and ask them to help us. In this gloom, the more eyes, the better.
We would lose too much time, Taran answered, pressing on through the underbrush. Gurgi followed, whimpering softly to himself. The rising ground told Taran they were moving above the foothills. No sound came but the hiss of saplings that whipped back as he passed, and the click of the horse's hooves on pale stones. Taran stopped short, his heart in his mouth. From a corner of his eye he glimpsed a fleeting movement. It lasted but an instant, a shadow within a shadow. Fighting down his fear, he groped ahead. The horses had turned more skittish than before, and Taran's mount laid back his ears and voiced a frightened whinny. Gurgi, too, had sensed the dark presence. The terrified creature's hair rose along his neck, and he began to howl pitifully.
Wicked, evil things come to follow harmless Gurgi. Oh, kind master, save Gurgi's poor tender head from hurtful dangers.
Taran drew his sword, and the companions, with many backward glances in the darkness, hurried on. This time the horses did not lag, but plunged desperately ahead, nearly dragging the bard with them.
Great villain!
Protested Fluider, who had crashed into a tree and struggled to free his jangling harp from a bush.
Hold up there! Next thing you know, we'll be looking for our own steeds, as well as Prince Roon.
With difficulty, Taran managed to calm the animals, who now refused to budge. Despite all his coaxing, pleading, and tugging, the horses stood stiff-legged and round-eyed, their flanks trembling. Taran, himself exhausted, sank to the ground. Our search is blind and useless, he said. You were right, he went on, turning to Fluider. We should have gone back. The time I had hoped to save is wasted twice over, and Eilonwy's danger is greater with every moment we delay. Now Prince Roon is lost, and so is Ka, for all we know.
I'm afraid you're right, sighed Fluider. And unless you or Gurgi knows where we are, I rather suspect we're lost too.